create all of the cash with which to make the purchase. Well, that technique has worked for literally dozens and dozens of years. It still works today. But some lenders are a little, let's call them savvier. Some people have taken the technique as we've taught it and have abused it in ways that have made some lenders weary of the mechanics of it. And so today what you tend to see is that if people are going to finance your purchase of a company, they like to see, quote, skin in the game. They want to know that you have your hard-earned cash invested in the deal, because they feel that if your hard-earned cash is invested in the deal, you're going to work harder to make the company a success and make sure that you perform at a level that gets them repaid or gets them a return on their investment. But like anything else, time moves on, and no sooner does one group change a method or a tactic or a strategy that makes it harder to get a deal done, and the very creative minds on the other side go to work and figure out, well, okay, if that's the way they're going to want to set it up now, how do I get back to where I don't have my own cash invested in the deal? How does it get back to where, for all appearance sake, I have skin in the game? And that the deal is going to happen based on the way we want it to happen, even though I physically don't have any cash in the game. And that's a central theme to our process, because our belief system here is that skin in the game is only one indicator of a person's commitment. The other is the nature of who they are and the pursuit of their own passion. We see entrepreneurs all the time that spend years of sweat capital getting deals together or making things happen. And that sweat capital is truly an investment in the business. It's truly skin in the game. It's just not recognized by the people who are putting up cash, who only value your cash as skin in the game. So we're going to teach you today one of several different ways of finessing that challenge, of handling it in a way that gives all appearances that you've got the skin in the game that they're looking for, and that they'll do the financing it is that you are going to ask them to do. It's just a question of bringing different players in at different places with different concepts and techniques. And I'm going to take you through that literally right now. So the challenge is skin in the game. If we don't have any cash, doesn't mean we don't have skin in the game. It can be sweat capital, but we're going to have to prove to other people we do have skin in the game, and here's how we're going to do it. At least this is one great way of doing it. First of all, let's take a look at the lender or an investor, and basically what they need to see is entrepreneurs' cash equity in the buying entity. So in other words, if you're setting up a new entity to buy a company, which is what we always recommend that you do, is to have a new company, which we're going to call BuyCo today, B-U-Y-C-O, BuyCo. And you set up this new corporation, and it's going to be the company that buys the company that's for sale. Entrepreneur cash may need to be at least 25% of the total purchase price. So somewhere between a small amount and 25% of whatever the total purchase price is are, depending on your lender or your investor, is what they want to see of your hard-earned cash in the deal. And so that's what we're going to have to be prepared to have them envision that that cash is really there. And then you've got lenders and investors, of course, who give no credit to the entrepreneur for the seller financing. In other words, you may get the seller to take back a note for 20, 30, even 40% of the purchase price, but they don't care about that. The fact that that means that their investment is less at risk or less crucial to the buying of the company. They just don't care. They give you no credit at all for a seller note. And of course, they don't give you credit for sweat capital. And the other challenge, or part of the challenge, is the acquired company itself may have little or no assets to leverage through an asset-based lender. So another complaint or challenge that we hear all the time is, well, gee, Gordon, these asset-based lenders would be great, but I can't use them, or I can only use them to a minimum extent because there are no machinery, there's no equipment, it's a high cash flow company, They have lots of good cash flow, but it's a service business. They don't have much in the way of actual assets. And so a lot of people sort of give up on that because they're thinking in terms of an asset-based lender. So what we're going to take you through today is a way that we currently overcome the challenges that you see there. And we're going to ask you to put your creative hat on. We're going to ask you to sit back and relax and absorb and think. So thinking and absorbing is the task for the next 15, 20 minutes. The solution is phantom skin in the game. And I kind of like the word phantom because it looks, feels, tastes, and touches like it's there. And it is there. It's just there in a stealth way. The way in which you got it there is not visible to everybody that is looking at it. They see it there, but they really don't know or understand how it got there. And they presume it's yours. And let me show you what that actually starts to look like. The first thing you got to do to make this work is, of course, you got to create a buying entity. And we're going to call that entity BuyCo. Remember, you are not personally buying the company. It's a company in which you own to start 100%, which doesn't have any assets in it or anything else. It's just an empty shell. But it's your company BuyCo that's going to be buying the entity that's for sale. Negotiate a rollback of seller cash on closing as investment into BuyCo. Now that may not make sense to anybody when you hear it right off the bat, but we have this empty shell company here called BuyCo, which is actually going to make the purchase. And in the old days, what you would do is you would make a deal with the seller that he would be taking back a note for 10, 20, 30, 40% of the purchase price of the company, and then you would pay him back that note over time. Well, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to take whatever we would have asked the seller to take back in a note, and we're going to instead pay them full price for the company. So if the purchase price of the company was $6 million, instead of buying it for $4 million in cash and then having them take back a note for $2 million, we're going to buy it for $6 million in cash, fully buy them out in cash. But then we're going to say, as part of the transaction, we want you to roll back $2 million of your proceeds that you get on sale. We want you to roll that back as an investment into the company that's going to buy your company. And then we'll make an arrangement to pay you back that investment just the way we would have had we signed a note for it. So from the seller's standpoint, it isn't going to change all that much. He's still getting paper for that part that he would have gotten a note for, but instead of paper, he's getting back shares in the company that you just formed to buy his company. The next thing that's going to happen is we're going to create 2 letters of intent to make this transaction work. One letter of intent is going to deal with the purchase of the company and what's going to happen and everything that's going to happen with respect to the purchase. The second letter of intent will actually be for a subscription agreement for the seller's investment into BuyCo. So in other words, the subscription agreement is saying on certain conditions, when certain things happen, you're going to take cash that you're going to get in effect from the sale of your company, and you're going to invest it into BuyCo. And for that, you're going to get X amount of shares, and it's going to spell out how those shares get bought back from the seller so that he ultimately gets all of his cash that he would have got, same as if it was a note, only now he's an investor in BuyCo instead of a holder of a note. Okay, so that's all that's really changed is form, not so much substance. And then we're going to create another double escrow with simultaneous closings of the purchase and the rollback investment. So in other words, each of these LOIs become the basis for agreements that one will govern the escrow for the purchase of the company, and this other one will govern the escrow for how the money gets invested back into the buying company. So hopefully you've got your arms around this. And so the next thing we want to do is graphically show you what's going to happen. All right, so you have escrow 1, and escrow 1 is going to purchase Selco. Okay, that's for the purchase of Selco. Buyco is going to buy Selco. Okay, then there's going to be a second escrow where it deals with how Buyco gets capitalized. And it's going to get capitalized with a rollback investment of cash from the seller. So that when this escrow closes and the seller gets his cash, it's, remember, tied into a second escrow, which is going to take a portion of that cash and invest it into Buyco. And when the escrow is closed, the Buyco cash comes back to the investment in this company. So all the financiers are over in this side, and all they're going to see is the investment of this company into this company. That's the only part they're going to see. So if you have a definitive purchase agreement, for example, and let's say the total purchase price of this company, Selco, is $5,450,000. That's what we're going to pay for the company, full purchase price. And we're going to pay it in cash. Then what's going to happen, this escrow is going to then deliver that to the seller, but there'll be instructions into this escrow over here, which are going to take the $1.5 million of that seller's cash, and through the subscription agreement are going to invest it back into this company. And this company will, of course, be using it to provide part of the $5,450,000 in cash for the purchase price. So that's where $1.5 million of the cash is going to come from your buyer. That's $1.5 million of the cash is going to, for the $5,450,000 is going to come from your Buyco. Then you're going to finance it more in the traditional way, where let's say there is some assets in here, so we may do $1 million of asset-based loan. And then for the other $3 million approximately that we need, we will do what's called a mezzanine loan. The asset-based loan, we could finesse that part without any of this, but not the mezzanine loan. If you have a mezzanine lender that's going to put up $3 million, they want to know that they're putting their $3 million in on top of the buyer's capital, which has to be at least 25% of their capital. That's kind of their rules, right? So what they see in this transaction is the buyer is coming in with $1.5 million. There's an asset-based lender financing $1 million. Their mezzanine loan is going to be for $3 million, and all their boxes are now checked. Okay, so they're ready now to do the loan because they're seeing $1.5 million from the buyer. The buyer is Buyco in the transaction. So that's essentially how it works. All right, we're going to add one more element here. And the element that we're going to add is a transactional loan for $1.5 million. And we're going to do this to answer the question of what if we have to have real money in the escrow 2 account in order to satisfy all the parties? Real cash in that account. Well, we can do what's called a transactional loan for $1.5 million, where that lender will put into the escrow, into escrow number 2, $1.5 million, where their terms of their loan are they get paid back out of the close of escrow. So when we start the whole process, there will be $1.5 million of cash in this escrow 2 that's owned, or that's money of the capitalization of Buyco. The money will be there. The next thing that's going to happen is the loan's going to get paid off at the close of escrow. So that money is only in there for maybe a day or two at the most. Probably it's in and it's out, and the lender is going to get his money back immediately. But when this thing goes into its closing, there will be $1.5 million of real cash sitting in a bank account before everything starts to close. The close will pay back the lender, and for this instant in and out of the money, they will charge us a cost of 2 to 3% on the $1.5 million loan. A small price to pay to satisfy everybody that we have come up with our own cash, because they never see it as a loan. They only see it as money in the account, and then when everything closes, that loan is going to get paid off. And it gets paid off how? Because we got $1.5 million of investment coming in at the close from the seller. So that wraps the whole thing up. No fuss, no muss, done. Now, I'm sure you have questions about this. And so what I'm going to do is open it up for questions. But before I do, I want to give you some insight into what these LOIs actually look like. And to do that, I'm going to escape from this for a moment. And we're going to go into these two documents here, which are in effect a template for the two different LOIs, the two different letters of intent. This one here has to do with the buying company, BuyCo. This one here has to do with how BuyCo gets funded. So this is